Thank you. And then we have, to the far left here, we have Mark Ricketts, President and CEO of National Church Residences, one of the largest providers of affordable housing and health care in the nation. Mark has very recently assumed the role of being the President and CEO of National Church Residences. And Mark has made a commitment to, coming into his role, to step back, take a moment and think about, well, how should I lead knowing what is coming? And has taken on this concept of shared leadership as something he both wants to learn and has really embodied how do I actually help my organization start to pursue this as a way of being on a regular day in, day out basis to provide better care for seniors and better affordable housing for those who need it. Mark, it's very nice to have
Mark.
you.
Just go back to them.
We don't want to leave you out.
I want to hear them. You feel misplaced. I feel misplaced.
We know, Mark, you've taken on this new role, and you had a wonderful predecessor who obviously did a lot of great things for the organization. And now you have the responsibility, along with your leadership team, to take the organization to another level. And you've taken this on in terms of shared leadership. I mean, this is a very positive, very productive, very faith-based organization. So many would say, why do things different? It's been successful. It has a lot of trajectory that's good. So why look at this piece of leadership and?
It's not going to be a change and a shift in what we're going to do. It's going to be maybe a new way of approaching it. As I was listening to your talk today, it was coming at me at such a pace, and all the thoughts, I'm writing down every quip that you had and tried to put it in my vocabulary real quickly, and I'm reminded back to when I was a child, and you're trying to use a word for the first time and you can't spell it, and you have to go back to when we actually had books called dictionaries. We don't have that anymore, right? You can actually speak into Siri now and misspell it, may help you out, but my mom would say, you know, go get the Webster's. That's how you're going to learn it. I'm not going to tell you how to spell that word. You've got to learn it. And then she would say to me, you know, Mark, it's not your word until you've used it in a sentence or used it in real life, and then you own that word. And so what I sensed as you were talking about all this word trust and competencies and integrity and all those values, I thought it's not going to be mine, in this case, not until I use it, but until I adopt it, right? I really sensed that today. And this is a picture that only a few of you that are in your 50s would understand it, but there was a magazine when I was a kid called Highlights for Children. There you are. If you're under the age of 30, you've never heard of it. It was always in the dentist's office because we didn't have a prescription or subscription. And so I'd open up that magazine, and do you remember the illustration of Goofus and Gallant? Yeah. Right? And Goofus was the irresponsible one, and Gallant was the responsible. Goofus was immature, and Gallant was mature. And I think about the role that I feel like I play today. I'm going to be Goofus, or I'm going to be Gallant, right? And I have to, do a lot of self-inspection. That's what I'm sensing here. In the world of shared leadership, it's surrounding yourself with people that can tell you, today, Mark, you were Goofus. Tomorrow you were Gallant. The idea of having other people give you feedback and not feel like you always have the right answers. You're not coming out of the gun saying, I know what we need to do. I state the bold vision. Everybody's going to line up behind me. It's that idea of a group of us getting together and trusting each other enough to talk about our Goofus and Gallant moments. So I feel like shared leadership is I would have to tell you, I take it to God's word where it talks about transforming, not being a conformist to society. I think a lot of people think we're supposed to be up here and have all the ideas. I don't see it that way. I see it the way of saying I just need to be transformed every day. That involves God's word, but also involves being around people that you trust and letting them affect you. Hope that helps answer your question.
Yeah, it does.
Can I comment on something
Please.
Edward said? And in your work with students, and many of them have not felt the weight of those responsibilities. And as we grow leaders, and that's, by the way, that's the business we're in at Chick-fil-A. You think about waffle fries and milkshakes and chicken sandwiches and so forth. That's the facade. The real software that runs our business, the software that enables us to compete with the Chipotles and the Panera Breads, and let alone the McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger Kings, and the KFCs in it. But the software that runs circles around those organizations is leadership software. And it's leadership software based on building muscle. Leaders have to have a lot of they have to have a lot of emotional muscle. To be a great artist, to play with grace. I'm a trumpet player. I was practicing scales early this morning. In order to play beautifully with any instrument, it takes a tremendous amount of muscle to play with grace and beauty. And for leaders to have the air of a servant leader takes a tremendous amount of emotional and character muscle. And the only way to build muscle is to feel weight. It's like, you know, keeping our physical muscle. You have to have resistance weight. And so as we think about all of our roles here in building the next generation of leaders, of people that are around us, they've got to feel the consequences of choices and decisions they make. They've got to feel the physical and the emotional weight. They've got to go home tired because they had to carry the weight. But if we will let them carry that weight, it not only enables us to step forward in our roles as our current generation of leaders to do what only we can do, but we're also backfilling the next generation of leaders who've got a lot of muscle because they've had to feel it. When I was just a child, I remember my dad stacking up Coca-Cola crates. Coca-Cola crates, these wooden things that had bottles that... and so we'd stack up these Coca-Cola crates. My dad would have me a big old butcher knife. And I'm just a kid, not even hardly 10 years old. My dad would get arrested today for what the kind of used to do responsibilities I had when I was a kid. But back there, we have to bone out these ribs. Before Chick-fil-A came along, we were a hamburger steak restaurant. And I went from 3 Coca-Cola crates to 2 Coca-Cola crates to 1 Coca-Cola. Then finally I could stand on the floor with that butcher knife in my hand. But I knew that I had responsibilities that none of our buddies had. And because of that, I went through my teenage years muscled up, and I wasn't a victim to the ploy and the temptations that I otherwise would have for sure succumbed to that because I felt the weight of responsibility. And so that was very powerful, obviously, in my life, but is a real metaphor for how we can muscle up the next generation of leaders by letting them feel the weight of that responsibility.
I was just wondering, in terms of your leaders, can you share, is that the message that you're sharing with your leaders, or can you just give us a soundbite of what else you're telling your leaders around this whole servant leadership component? We
use an acrostic on serve. Great leaders serve, S-E-R-V-E. And I can do a whole talk on this, but I'll give it to you. Yeah, ask for a soundbite. Say a quick soundbite. Great leaders, S, see and shape the future. It's all about vision. You can't take people to a place you've never been. E, great leaders engage and develop others. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal, then you're going to have to engage and develop others. E, R, you have to reinvent continuously. It's a changing world, so the old methods just don't work anymore. We've got to reinvent continuously. V, we've got to value results and relationships. I'm very relationally oriented. My wife is very results oriented. Between the two of us, in 42 years of marriage, we make some pretty good decisions when we value results and relationships. And then E is that great leaders embody the values. We've got to live it out. As leaders, if we all get laryngitis, that's no problem because 70–80% of what we're going to communicate is about what we do, not what we say. We do need the words, but it's a very small part of our effectiveness as a leader.
Very nice. Thank you. Appreciate that.